Hello everyone, I'm Tom Trush, direct response copywriter and marketing strategist, and today we're talking about 7 proven ways to generate guaranteed golf instructor profits. It's a variation of my 7 proven ways to generate guaranteed marketing profits, but we added in the golf instructor section because today we're talking with Scott Seifferlein. He's a PGA golf instructor who's been featured in Donald Trump's book, and he has 22 years of golfing experience. He's the founder of Golf Marketing or USAGolfMarketing.com, and he helps other golf instructors achieve the lifestyle of their dreams. So Scott, how you doing?
Very good, Tom. Thank you very much for being on this, for having me on this show. This is fantastic. Just as some background, when I first started in the golf industry, I didn't know what copywriting was. So for my audience, the golf instructors out there, to help them understand a little bit more about what marketing and copywriting is, could you give a brief description on what copywriting actually is?
Yeah, sure. Well, it's essentially salesmanship in print. I mean, anybody's in the marketing world has probably heard that before, but the way I like to describe it, though, it's that challenge of getting people to take action from the written word. And whether that written word is on a website, on a sales page, postcard, whatever it is, getting them to take your desired action. And unfortunately, there are cases, and I'm sure we'll get into this, where the thought is, let's get that desired action being some type of sale. And so they kind of jumpstart to that point. And that's not really, when it comes to effective marketing, yes, the sale is absolutely necessary, but we kind of have to take a journey to get to that point. And that's where some of these proven ways to generate guaranteed marketing profits come from. Because it's all about relationships when it comes to marketing. I mean, would you agree, Scott?
And I discovered that, oddly enough, copywriting was probably the highest paid skill that I've ever learned. I mean, we would think as golf instructors that what we do is our highest paid skill. In other words, giving a golf lesson would be our highest paid skill. But actually, the highest use, most profitable use of our time is to learn how to write copy that sells. And so that's why I'm really excited to share this information with golf instructors today.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely, if a golf instructor can learn how to write marketing copy, I mean, pretty much you can create marketing materials at will and generate response. I think there's a big challenge where people think when they have to sit down and write marketing copy, immediately what goes to their head is, what can I put on this sheet of paper or on this website that's going to generate a sale? And you get all tense and you get that writer's block, and it's hard to get words to come out from your mind into your fingers to click on that keyboard. So hopefully we can help solve some of those problems today.
Yes, let's do it.
All right. So should we get into the first one?
Perfect.
All right. So the first way to generate guaranteed marketing profits is to place your marketing where prospects gather. And not only that, I think you have to take it a step further, and you have to place that message where prospects gather, but then also drive your audience back to a location where you can collect contact information. It's absolutely critical. I mean, especially if a prospect doesn't know you, they're going to want to find out more about you. And the reality is, if you just have, maybe it's a little square, if you're doing a print ad, it's a little square space, you're very limited on how much information and how much relationship you can do with that little square space on an ad. So put that, use that introduction where your prospects gather, but then you have to drive them back so that you can further develop that relationship with your new audience. So kind of curious to hear what your, I guess, input is from a golf professional perspective, and how that can help instructors too.
Yeah, that's a great question, Tom. There's basically 3 different types of golf instructors, or put it this way, scenarios that a golf instructor would be in. There's number 1, a golf instructor would be in a scenario where they have a captive audience. So all they have to do is basically show up, and that audience, as long as they don't blow it, that audience is going to give them money. Then scenario number 2 is where they don't have a captive audience, but they figured out how to build a database, and they have a database, so that database becomes their captive audience, and they can reach out to that database and sell. And then there's scenario number 3, the most difficult scenario to be in, is basically starting out with 0 captive audience and 0 database. So you'd be at a golf facility where there's no captive audience. There's not really any people that you can go out and solicit business from, and you have no database. So now, out of those three scenarios, scenario number one is obviously the best. You have a captive audience, but you still want to be able to drive that traffic, that captive audience, to a place where they can build a relationship with you. So number one, that relationship is face-to-face. The more you can get face-to-face time with that audience that's already there on your existing site, the better that is. But then you also, outside of that face time, while you're sleeping and they're up staring at the ceiling at night worrying about how to stop their slice, they could go to a website or have a direct mail piece sent to them or an email campaign, some type of place where they could go and opt in to receive a report like the Stop Slicing in 7 Swings, or whatever that report would be that would add value to them. So what I discovered in my scenario, I was leasing space at facilities that would either be competing with me or would have a non-compete clause where I wouldn't be able to capture that captive audience that they had, so I had to go out and build my own audience. And one thing I discovered was that showing up number one on Google was ultimately the most profitable decision I ever made. And so I put together a lot of systems in place so that I would show up number one on Google when people searched for the terms that were related to what I sell. And ultimately that drove the traffic to me so that I didn't have to have that captive audience. Does that help? Hopefully that helps the audience. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, that's perfect. Of course, getting a number one spot on Google, you know that's where your prospects are gathering, because I think in any situation where people are looking for a type of services or even a product, I mean, our first action is to go online and start searching and researching. So I think it's a great thing to get that number one spot. Big benefit there. Curious about this with golf professionals. One of the things that I run into with it's not necessarily clients, but prospects or people that will contact me, is they will say, well, I've got this big opportunity. I can advertise in this. Maybe it's a small little neighborhood newsletter, and it's really cheap. And should I do it? And there are many times where just because you can get in front of an audience for cheap, or at a low cost, I will often recommend not doing it, because you're still, even though it's not that much of an investment, you're still wasting your money because your prospects aren't hanging out there. So why do it? I mean, I'm just curious, does that happen in your industry as well?
That absolutely happens. I was talking to a golf course about 5 years ago, and they were disappointed with their campaign results. They had sent out basically a free round of golf to 20,000 people within 10 miles of their private club, and they only had 16 responses out of 20,000. They were wondering why. And I asked them if they sent it to golfers, and I said, what do you mean? We just sent it to people that live within 10 miles of our facility. And I said, well, if we would have cut that into, let's say 10% of the population actually plays golf, now let's mail 2,000 of those people. We'll get the same 16 responses, but we only had to mail 2,000 versus 20,000, so the return on investment would be much greater. So that absolutely happens. There's constantly, I would call them basically shiny, flashy lights in our face of, hey, advertise over here with us because we'll get you in front of 75,000 people. And this lure that there's this big audience to get in front of. And the more we can target and niche our marketing so that our marketing is only going to those people that are staring at the ceiling at night saying, oh my gosh, how am I going to stop my slice? If we can target that audience, it's so much more profitable.
Yeah, well, that tip that you gave right there, I mean, they're instantly cutting their marketing costs. I mean, although it may be perceived as cheap, if you're not getting response, what's the benefit? It brings you no benefit. All you're doing is you're opening up your wallet and you're basically tipping that wallet over and letting your money run out. Yeah. I mean, you got to, if your prospects aren't hanging out there, it's worthless regardless of what the investment is to get your message in front of that audience, because the best marketing message gets ignored if nobody hears it, nobody sees it, and nobody cares about it. So it could be a great message that you have, but if the wrong people are seeing it, it's worthless.
Exactly.
Yeah. So let's jump on. We'll go to number 2. And number 2 is to communicate with prospects and clients on a regular basis. The challenge that I see here, and we've touched on it, is the list building. And so many clients or prospects that I'm working with, really list building takes a back seat. So what happens is they're always trying to get in front of an audience. They always have to pay to get in front of an audience. And I often tell them if they're not generating a list, then they're overspending on their marketing. Because if you have a list, regardless of how small it is, you still have an audience that is anxious, that is eager for your message. And if it's an we'll just use email for an example, which is something that I think a lot of people like because of the cost effectiveness. But you can, if you're communicating on a consistent basis and you're delivering value, well then people are going to embrace your marketing message. And in fact, if it's good value, they're going to share it for you. So you often get an army of people that will spread your marketing message at no cost for you, but then it also provides that third-party endorsement as well because it's coming from somebody else. So how does that apply to the the golf industry?
Oh wow, I could go on and we could do a whole day seminar on this, Tom. This is a great topic right here. And I know a little background about you that the audience doesn't know is that you do a fair amount of marketing for attorneys. And my golf instructor colleagues will hate me for saying this, but golf instructors are a lot like attorneys. In that we were trained through schooling and through traditional being in the business, the traditional business of golf. We were trained that if we get a lot of certifications and a lot of knowledge, that's the secret. We need to know as much as possible, and then people will come and do business with us. And attorneys, I know, are trained the same way. But if an attorney doesn't know how to market and communicate with their audience and build relationships with their audience, they're dead in the water. And that's the same case with the greatest golf instructors. We have a lot of golf instructors in our industry that were section teachers of the year, chapter teachers of the year. They have awards, they have certifications. If you look at their website, they have 6 or 7 certifications right on the homepage. And a lot of these golf instructors are making less than 6 figures, even with all those awards and all that certification, because they don't know how to market and communicate with their audience. So your question was staying in front of them consistently. One example of that in the golf industry, and this was featured in the I believe it was a February 2012 PGA magazine, but it was my 67 touch system that I put in place and used with my own clients and prospects. And the 67 touch system is a communication system I use that consists of email campaigns, direct mail campaigns, and even actual cards like a greeting card campaigns. And so the email campaign was 52 weeks of champion success strategies, basically golf tips. I call them champion success strategies. So that goes out once a week, 52 weeks out of the year. Then I send a monthly newsletter. That was a direct mail newsletter that I sent out once a month for 12 months. And then there was 3 greeting card campaigns that I sent out. So a birthday card, a thank you card, and an anniversary card, the anniversary of them doing business with me. And those campaigns ultimately led to, that added up to 67 touches that I had with my database every single year.
Well, that's great because I think the challenge is when you tell people to consistently communicate with your clients and prospects, they don't know what they should be sharing with that audience. How many of those should be not necessarily pitches, but how many times should they be asking for some type of sale or a hire or a purchase or something? So it sounds like with your campaign, especially the weekly emails, they're getting tips, they're getting value from there, and that's exactly along the lines of what you want to do, because again, you'll get people. If they got value from what it is that you shared, they'll start sharing that with other people. It's one of those secrets of getting your marketing message to reach more people without spending more money. Because if you're really delivering value, value spreads. And pitches and just getting buy, that stuff doesn't spread. But if you're helping somebody, that stuff's going to spread. Sometimes like wildfire. And you always hear those situations. Well, I want to. Maybe it's a video. I want it to go viral, and so you see people that try to make that happen. And I tend to lean towards, just focus on your prospects. What are the biggest problems that they're having? As you said, what's having them staring at the ceiling at night? And then use your marketing to share tips, strategies, ideas, resources to help them overcome those problems. Because then you're seen as a resource and not just another person just pitching their services. Because when you do that, you're seen as just any other golf instructor.
Exactly, and you know our friend Tony Rubleski says that 68% of all our customers leave us because they feel unappreciated. And when I'm sending out a weekly golf tip, a monthly newsletter, a thank you card, an anniversary card, and a birthday card, there's never a point in time where my clients are able to forget about me and feel like I don't appreciate them. So I never lose influence with them because I'm in front of them continuously. And that makes it so that, and I'm also providing them value continuously. So that makes it when I make a call to make that sale, or I sneak in the PS of a content piece, I sneak in PS, by the way, special offer, launching next year's programs, savings with investment 5 months in advance as example. I'm able to have people that take action because I've provided them that value, so they're already predisposed to doing business with me and ready to do business with me. So that helps significantly.
Right, and if anything, by doing that, you're also increasing their desire for what it is that you have. Because I mean, we hear it many times before. Oh boy, I just received all this for free. Imagine if I paid for a little bit.
Yeah.
And so you're
Exactly.
increasing that demand for what it is that you're offering.
Exactly. Good topic.
Yeah. So let's move on. We'll go on to number 3, and this ties right into it, is that you want to deliver more value than your competition, because in today's world, value is often viewed in the form as help. Again, we touched on it earlier. People are looking for information when they go online because they have a problem. They need a solution to a problem, so they will search. So as you talked about, having that number one position in Google is a great thing, but if they go to that number one position and they go to your website and there's no value there, there's no help for them, again, it's like that marketing message that could be a great message, but it's getting in front of the wrong audience. In this case, it's an audience that's seeking value, not necessarily to buy or value or help. And so you still have to really focus on delivering more than what your competition is willing to do. And I often tell people, don't be afraid to share your best stuff, because your competition, they're nervous about it because their fear is, if I share too much, then they're not going to want to hire me. Well, that's not really the case, because there's a big difference between knowing how to do something and actually executing it. I mean, Scott, you can tell me right now, some 3 quick tips to stop me from slicing the ball off the tee, and you could tell it to me over and over again, and I can know how to do it, but then actually executing it is a whole nother thing.
Exactly, and that's where the private consulting and the paid coaching would come into play. There's an acronym that I learned from Glenn Dietzel and Sean Miller, and that's ASK, ask. A stands for attitude, S stands for skills, and K stands for knowledge. And of those 3, we can give away big K. We can give away all the knowledge. We can educate to dominate, as they would say. And that positions us to be able to provide value to the marketplace, to where that marketplace would then want us to help them implement that knowledge. So now they have this knowledge that we've given them through the 67 touch system and the consistent communication. They feel there's value there. They've even probably been able to benefit from some of that knowledge to some small degree, and that gives them this taste like, wow, that was awesome. I just went from hitting a 6-iron 110 yards, I'm a big strong dude, and 110 yards is not so cool for a big strong dude, plus it's going short and to the right and always in the bunker and in the water and in the trees. And now I'm starting to see my ball flight now is going 130 yards. It's not curving as much to the right. What's going to happen if I actually hire this person to work with me? Could I get my 6-iron to go 150 or 170 yards and actually onto the green? So that's where they would then hire us to help them with the attitudes and the skills necessary to be able to implement that knowledge and put it into play and actually see some real benefits, so that they now are kicking the snot out of their buddies, if you will.
Well, that ties in perfectly with the next point at number 4. If somebody is then, you've given them enough and you've given them a reason to move forward and hire you, well, now you have to do number 4, and that is to remove the risk of working with you. The great benefit of providing value, of delivering helpful information that addresses prospects' problems, is you start developing this relationship and some credibility and trust with your prospects. However, they're going to go into a buying situation, and any time that we go into a buying situation when we have to pry open that wallet, there's a voice in our heads that say, oh man, am I going to get taken advantage of? Is there going to be something that's could go wrong here, and I'm a little bit nervous about it. So you got to understand that regardless of how often you have communicated with prospects, there is a chance that they're not going to trust you. And so you have to remove that risk in working with you, and probably the easiest way to do that is with some type of guarantee. And all you have to do is just think about what's the biggest hurdle holding back your prospects from working with you, and then address that hurdle in your guarantee, and it'll often get them to take that action. Because it's almost like, we talk about in marketing circles about entering the conversation that's going on in your prospects' minds, and they're thinking about that. In their mind, they're like, ooh, I don't know if I should do that. I don't know. Maybe Scott isn't going to show up at all of our lessons, or he's going to have to reschedule at the last minute. I don't know if I want to move forward because I'm nervous about that because my time is tight, it's valuable. But if you take that situation and you now address it in a guarantee, well, then they're like, oh man, I was just thinking about that, and now I can see that problem has been solved. So what are your thoughts on guarantees, Scott?
Yeah, you gave a perfect intro into that too, because we think in our industry, we think of guarantees as offering a satisfaction guarantee or some type of bland guarantee, like be happy with your results type of guarantee, and those don't have power. And we also struggle sometimes with, well, what should I guarantee? And so you guaranteed the time factor. Time is valuable. Guaranteed that your instructor will show up on time, not be on his phone during your lesson, and actually pay attention to you. And so there's a certain percentage of the marketplace that would respond to that because they've had that experience. Their instructor doesn't show up on time. He cancels, reschedules. She gets on the phone, crosses their arms during a session. So there's lots of different things that you can guarantee, and make it fun too. Instead of just the satisfaction guaranteed BS that doesn't have any impact whatsoever, you can have fun. In fact, one of my guarantees, and this goes back to a unique selling position that I had, it was stop slicing in 5 swings guaranteed. Well, that in itself was powerful because it targeted slicers and it targeted a time period that they would achieve that goal, just 5 swings, and it was guaranteed. However, I backed that up with the following statement. If you can honestly say after your session it was not the most amazing experience you've ever achieved in your golfing career, and you can honestly say that you have not witnessed progress in your golf swing and in your golf score, I will personally buy your golf clubs and give you a bowling ball or tennis racket.
I love that. I love that. And that's what I like, in seeing your copy, Scott, is that you do like to have fun. I mean, the reality is marketing should be fun, but most people don't look at it as being fun. But with the guarantee, this is one place where you can really grab some attention and have some fun, and that would get people laughing. And it may not be laugh out loud stuff, but at least it's going to get them, to think, well, Scott's a little bit different here. He's there to have some fun, and this isn't. And maybe, one of their fears is, well, geez, it's going to be really stuffy if I go on a lesson with Scott. I don't want to go. Maybe it's going to be, that country club setting that you see on in movies and stuff where you're going to feel out of place. But then, with a guarantee like that, Scott, you prove that you're out there to have fun, but they're going to learn something at the same time as well.
Yes, and it would create laugh out loud when people would flip that business card over and actually read the guarantee statement, and they would laugh about that. And oftentimes they would come to their first session, and they would be in this position where they would be trying to sell themselves to me, that they would be a client that would be good for me to have, because the last thing that they want is for me to have to buy them a tennis racket. They really want this to work, and they're ready to listen. So that guarantee had benefits on multiple fronts.
That's incredible. I love it. Love it, Scott. Well, let's jump on. We'll go to number 5, and we've touched on this already quite a bit, but we'll dig into it a little bit more. But number 5 is to stick to a marketing schedule. And I put this one in because so many times people will only market when they need leads or they need to generate revenue. And what happens when you do this is that your marketing comes off as desperate. And so that's why the schedule is so important, and the consistency is so important. I'm a big one in marketing and in creating trust through your marketing materials, and consistency creates trust. So if you're communicating on a regular basis with your clients, again, as we talked about earlier, they're not only going to look for your message, they're going to embrace it more, and you're going to start developing this relationship with people. And I'm sure you've had a situation, Scott, where because you're communicating with people on a consistent basis, oftentimes people will, they'll get to know you. They'll start replying to your emails, asking you questions. You may go to a in-person event, maybe it's a networking thing or it's some kind of an awards event or something, and people will come up to you because they've received your marketing messages. They feel like they know you, and you'll look at them and you're like, man, I don't know who you are. It's kind of a weird situation, but when that happens, it just kind of shows you that, hey, your marketing is real. It's treating people as one-on-one. They're getting value from it, and it's a great position to be in when people feel so comfortable with you that they're willing to approach you in an in-person event, and you may not know them, but still you've already developed that relationship. And there's a danger if all you're doing is sticking behind your keyboard and you're not making those face-to-face contacts, because they could be really, really beneficial. But I guess the last point here is the key to remember is that you want to have this consistency, because there are many times where your prospects aren't going to take action on that first contact. And I put this stat in with the sheet that has these guaranteed marketing profits on, and it said 80% of sales are made between the 5th and 12th contact with the prospect. And so that ties right into what you were talking about earlier, Scott, is was it 61? Was it 61 points of contact that you had with that campaign?
Right, 67.
67, yeah. So yeah, you just got to keep with that schedule.
Oh yeah, exactly. And so we're looking at if you only have 20% of your sales come in the first 5 contacts, and then the other 80%, 7 or beyond 5 contacts, and oftentimes in the golf industry, it's even more than that, because we have seasonal businesses. So we may be like you are in Phoenix. So the season there is now, it's happening now, and people are buying now. But in the summer, when it's 120 degrees, they're not buying as much. So it's tougher to create those year-round sales. And here in Michigan, this is a time of year that they're not buying traditionally, and the May, June, July months are more the traditional months in which you can create that cash flow. So now a lot of golf instructors struggle with that because they only create cash flow for 3 to 6 months out of the year, and then those other 6 to 9 months, basically, they're struggling with either average cash flow or very little to zero cash flow. What I discovered was that if I communicated consistently with my database, I discovered I could create cash flow 12 months out of the year, even when I'm not actually providing the service 12 months out of the year. So I don't coach golfers 12 months out of the year, but I'm able to create cash flow 12 months out of the year, and relatively consistent cash flow, so that it's not way up here one month and then way down another month. And that consistency of that communication, 67 touches a year, helps with that significantly. I've actually had people on my database that have purchased after receiving 600 plus emails. And they just were hanging out on that database, receiving content over and over again. So now we're 8 some years into the process, and all of a sudden, 8 years later, they finally decide to buy. It was finally a point at which they decided to buy. And then others, they buy on the very first point of contact. You just never know. So that having that consistent automated process helps significantly produce more and more revenue, and have that consistent revenue 12 months out of the year instead of just seasonal revenue.
Yeah, well, you touched on something there that I think it's overlooked quite a bit in the automation side of it. I mean, how do you use automation in your marketing? I'm sure, I imagine you're doing some autoresponders, and in case people aren't familiar with autoresponders, basically those are emails that go out on a designated period of time. But I'm curious, Scott, what are some of the automation things that you do for your marketing?
I do have an automation where somebody signs up, opts into my list, they receive a series of autoresponders. But on top of that, because my business is mostly seasonal, where I'm coaching most of my golfers from May through July, in the off season, I pre-write a fair amount of my content and material and set it up so that my 67 touch system goes out and all I have to do is copy and paste the week that it's going to go out. And I can even copy and paste that in advance. I've got one campaign going right now that is called the drawing a blank on the specific name of it, but it's a content generation campaign for golf outing coordinators, and they are sending my content to their lists to try and get their list to sign up for their golf outing. And I pre-wrote all 23 of those steps so that now they're already preset to go throughout the year, and I don't have to worry about it. It just automatically goes out. So I use an autoresponder email campaign system through Legendary Marketing, and a lot of golf industry professionals know Legendary Marketing in our industry.
Okay, no, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, let's jump on to let's see, number 6. And number 6 is to create an experience for others. Now, the reality, I put this one in because the reality is most marketing is boring, and most of it gets ignored because it's boring, and there's no value to the prospect or the client or anyone who might be remotely interested in what it is that you're offering. So you need to create these experiences. We've talked about having fun in your marketing, and that's one way to do it. But also another thing to think about is that anybody, regardless of what industry you're in, and I'm sure it's the same for the golf industry, is that your prospects recognize, for example, what an advertisement is. And so if they open up a newspaper and they see an ad in there, they immediately recognize, hey, that's an ad. So on a subconscious level, many people will just ignore that. Say they get a flyer, immediately the subconscious mind tells them, hey, this is a marketing flyer, this doesn't necessarily benefit me, it's to buy something, so they won't give it as much attention. And so one of my big tips for creating experiences is to make your marketing not look like marketing. Because again, we want to overcome that subconscious level in the brain that tells your prospects, hey, this isn't something that's worth looking into because it's just a marketing message or it's just an advertising message. So marketing comes down to emotions, and people will take actions based on their emotions and then back it up with logic. And as we said, something fun is going to target emotions. A big one that I like to use is target the element of surprise. I mean, maybe it's delivering so much value, more value than people are expecting, or in the case of, say, an advertisement, if your prospects know what an advertisement is and you're advertising in a newspaper, for example, make your advertisement look like an editorial. And so what's going to happen, I mean, many studies have shown it's up to about 700% greater readership with an editorial than it is with a traditional ad. And so what will happen is, readers, people of a newspaper, will read your ad, which looks like editorial in the publication, and then they'll come to an end and they'll be like, oh man, that was an ad actually, and I didn't even realize it. And it's not that you want to, you're not trying to trick them. It's just, and the thing is, if your ad is actually delivering value, then you're rewarding them for reading your information. So, kind of turn this over to you, Scott, and get your idea. And how do you create experiences in your marketing in the golf industry?
Yeah, that's a great question because we're creating 67 touches a year, and so what do you send? I mean, a lot of people are thinking, well, I'm not a creative person. How am I going to create this content? But you can structure your golf tips so that they're engaging and entertaining instead of using a lot of golf language. You can read it as if you're writing golf tips to people that just play once a week or once a month and are not really familiar with all the technical terms, and you can have fun with it. You can share stories. I created a campaign one time called the Big Joe campaign, and it was about this profile of this golfer who was actually a dream client of mine. It was a perfect setup scenario. And so it got into a lot of the psychographics of what Big Joe is experiencing, how Big Joe is going to handle certain golf shots around the green, and there was this whole story that was actually in multiple emails that went out about this Big Joe experience. And so that was a successful campaign. And then there's other things you can include to break it up. So you may share, sometimes you may share outside of the golf tips, you may share tools that would then help with those golf tips. So if you give a stop slicing example golf tip and then you share a tool the following week, or even a training tool that will help you stop that slice. So those are some examples of how you can break it up so it's not monotonous and boring.
Well, one that jumps out to me, this was fairly recently, I saw a video that you did, and I commend you for this because I mean anybody can do this. Is you just create these videos and experiences out on the course where you had it. I watched it where you get that mark on your pants from when you have your keys and you're getting out of the golf cart. You gave the tip on how to avoid that and why it happens. And I was like, I watched it. I was like, man, that's happened to me before. And of course, I think in the back of your mind, why it's happening. But I loved how you took just a fun angle, something that not necessarily is a traditional golf tip, and you made a fun little piece to maintain that communication with your clients and prospects. So I commend you. That was a great one.
Yes, thank you. And there was another one last Kentucky gave this golf tip on how to avoid goose shit when you're putting. And it's how to make that putt without hitting the goose shit. So that was a great tip, and I swiped that and deployed that into a how to hit when goose shit is behind your golf ball tip. And so you can have a lot of fun, and you don't have to always be politically correct. You can engage your list with a lot of fun material. You just allow yourself to not be stuck inside this box of, I have to teach perfect grip, stance, alignment, and posture, and this perfect technical deep plane and all the 3D and technical terms. You can have a lot of fun with your golf tips to engage your list.
Yeah, and that's going to create that experience. So good job on that one, Scott. So let's tie into the final one here, number 7. Embrace small audiences. Now, I left this for the final one because it targets a very big, I think, misconception for people. And we touched on it a little bit earlier, but so many times we have people who think getting in front of a bigger audience is better. And what I encourage people to do is embrace something called narrowcasting. So let's talk about the difference between narrowcasting and broadcasting. Broadcasting is taking a small message, a little message, minimal message, putting in front of a large audience for a large fee. So something for broadcasting might be traditional TV advertising or radio advertising, where you have this set period of time to, maybe it's 30 seconds, maybe it's 60 seconds to deliver a message, and you're going to get in front of a lot of people, but it's also going to cost you a lot of money. And I think in this day and age, although broadcasting is effective, there are some times where I think you should be using it. I think one of the easier things to target now is what's referred to as narrowcasting, where that is taking a larger message, more time, maybe it's an article, blog post, podcast, video like this, spreading it to a smaller audience for a less amount of money, a smaller investment. So we're creating, say, this video right now. Now the audience may not be hundreds of thousands of people, but the people who are going to see it are going to be more valuable, more targeted than if we took this video and we put it on TV, where you just run the risk of anybody who comes across it, they may watch it, they probably won't because they aren't interested in. And in this day and age with the internet, people are searching for solutions, as you talked about being number 1 in the search engine, so they're actively searching for solutions to their problems. And if you have, whether it's articles, blog posts, videos, even the simple 2-minute, 1-minute videos, and you position those well, and you're targeting a problem, people are going to find them. And I would argue that those types of situations are much more valuable than spending a small fortune to broadcast your marketing message to this huge audience, where you only have a set period of time to deliver your message, that 30 seconds, 60 seconds. We could sit on here and we can record this video for 2 hours, and really it's not costing us anything except some time. And it's also providing value, though, where you can't necessarily provide as much value when you're delivering your message in a traditional broadcasting medium. So what's your thoughts on that one, Scott?
Yeah, is my audio still okay? I think my audio changed here, and can you still hear me okay?
Yeah, yep, everything's fine.
I'll keep rolling. And this reminds me of an example, this Fox TV person called me up, and we have a local Fox affiliate here in Grand Rapids, and they wanted to pitch me on this ad of getting my information in front of 75,000 some odd people. And I started to ask some challenging questions for them, and they started to tell me that they had, wealthy people watch their shows, so wealthy people would see my ads, but I also was asking them, well, if I'm marketing 75,000 people, that they're not all going to be wealthy, are they? Well, no, and so some of the people aren't going to play golf, are they? And so we discovered that through some challenging questions to this ad rep person that they were not a good fit for what I'm looking for, because I could take a mailing list of 300 golfers that have incomes over $125,000 and just mail to those 300 people to avoid the waste of the other 74,700 people that were not in my target market. And same thing if an attorney example, I'm sure you coach your attorneys not to do a broadcast 75,000 person message if that's not their target market. If it is their target market, then great, but if that's not their target market, if they can niche and micro-target the market, they can be much more profitable. It kind of goes back to that golf course that mailed to 20,000 some odd people within 10 miles of their golf course. And 90% of those people don't even play golf. And so the more you can target market and micro-niche, the more successful that you can be with your marketing, and the more personal you can get with your message, the better you can get with your messaging.
Yeah, I've got this example. I have an attorney friend who is really big in the video space for attorneys, and what he does, he creates these short educational videos, and like, for example, it might be something, and I'm kind of going off the top of my head because I don't know what the exact title was, but maybe it's something like knee replacement surgery, how to determine if something went wrong. And so he puts these short videos together, and I mean, he literally has, I think it's upwards of 1,000 videos now on YouTube with these different topics, these areas of focus that he has in his law firm. And you look at those and you think, well, how much value could a video like that be? I mean, the reality is it's not costing him much to record these videos. He's doing it himself. He he has all the equipment, but then it requires some time. But then once you get this process down, you upload these videos and you get them to YouTube and all these other video resources. But you think about it, the audience isn't going to be huge. It isn't a video that's going to go viral, but somebody who watches a video on knee replacement surgery, how to determine if something went wrong, is going to be a darn good prospect because they're there for a reason. And so if you have, say you have a link back to your website where you can gather contact information, you're offering a free guide, a resource, whatever it is, well, now you're using these short little videos to now grow your list and speak to an audience that wants to hear your message. And I'd argue creating videos like that for a small audience is going to bring you much more benefit, just as you talked about, Scott, of kind of this mass mailing or trying to get to this huge audience just because an ad exec told you, hey, they try to blind you with these big numbers. I mean, it gets a little ridiculous because the reality is a lot of the times these ad execs, they know they're targeting your ego, and they know if they tell you you're going to get this huge number of people seeing your message, the reality is they're not going to see it, but they know that big number is going to grab your attention. So it's good to hear that it doesn't just happen, that it's something that happens in the golf industry as well. You have these ad execs trying to pull the same tricks on you.
Oh, absolutely, and they play off of that, and it goes back to all the shareholders in big companies, and those shareholders expect to see the company message on a billboard and on TV, regardless of whether it's profitable or not. They just expect to see it there, and that can filter down into country clubs in their marketing. It can filter down into public facilities in their marketing. It can filter all the way down to golf instructors, and we try and copy these big company, big ad budgets with no targeting whatsoever. It's a tough trap to fall into. I like one last thing on this topic. I like to call out who it's for. And so in other words, I've got an event coming up on March 25th that I'm promoting right now, and I'm calling specifically who this is for. So the message says, this is for you if you are a high-end financial advisor, attorney, or insurance professional. Right there, at the beginning of the message, it actually calls out who it's for. And in some cases, I like to call out who it's not for. So I'll put messages in my copy that says, this is not for you if you are, et cetera, and call out. So I try to narrow my audience and eliminate prospects as fast as possible so that I only have to talk to the best and most profitable prospects that I can talk to.
Great tip there, because I mean, that's going to help you, as you touched on earlier. It's going to not only make your marketing message more effective, but it's going to cut your cost. I mean, you're not having to waste your time communicating with people who aren't really prospects, or even getting your message in front of people that aren't really your prospects. So I love that tip. All right, well, we reached all 7 of our proven ways to generate guaranteed marketing profits. So I mean, any last minute advice you want to give, Scott?
Well, yes, I think we've given our audiences some great content. I know all the golf instructors out there are really going to love this, but they're also thinking, okay, this is awesome, I want to start implementing, but how do I actually write this copy? I'm not a creative person. How do I write this? What programs do you have in place? I mean, they could hire you personally, and what besides hiring you personally, and I want you to share with my audience how they could hire you personally to write copy, but what other options do they have to engage your services?
Well, I think probably the easiest thing to do is to go to my website at tomtrush.com, and I have resources there that allows them to gather tips and ideas for writing their own marketing pieces. I have 3 books as well that, if you just search my name on Amazon, those books will come up. The most recent is called Escape the Expected: The Secret Psychology of Selling to Today's Skeptical Consumers. And I wrote that book as a way for people who, they don't even necessarily have to go through the entire book. It's designed that you can open up to any page and you can get a tip or an idea or a strategy to implement to help you generate leads, or to help generate greater responses on existing marketing materials that you're already using. Of course, I have other free resources. If you go to tomtrush.com, there is always, and I change it all the time, there's a free guide on there. I'd have to look at what one I'm offering right now, but it's a way that you can get some quick tips for free. And let me see, I got to look it up here real quick.
Well, that's great, and I think the Escape the Expected book is right on the shelf back here behind me.
Oh, nice.
I know a copy of it.
Nice. Let's see here.
Well, that's great. So tomtrush.com?
That is correct, tomtrush.com. And then the free guide that's offered on there right now is 3 quick fixes for underperforming marketing materials. And as we've talked about, that guide is designed to help generate a list for me. And so if you just put in your name and email address, you'll get some quick tips. I don't pitch a lot at all in my emails. It's just a lot of valuable information that people can grab an idea and implement. My idea is always give them something that they can implement, they can learn now and implement by tonight. So they're designed to be really quick and easy things to generate responses and get your message out to a larger audience.
All right, that's fantastic. Well, thanks for having me on, Tom.
Hey, well, thank you, Scott. I appreciate having you and sharing these tips. It's interesting to hear the perspective from a golf professional perspective, and definitely, I mean, I learned a lot, just from your tips. So, again, thanks a lot for the time, Scott. I appreciate it.
Thank you.